crazy idea.
Do I?
Why don't you tell me yours?
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Road trip.
Road trip!
Get in. So where are we going?
Somewhere new.
Somewhere far.
Somewhere amazing.
Wonderful.
What if the trip changes us?
Well then. Mission accomplished.
And what if things...
Stay the same.
Well, in that case...
Just enjoy the ride.
Is this about the destination?
Well, yes, but
It's also about the journey.
it does make sense.
The bags are already packed.
Buckle up.
Oh, I am. There we go. Hey, how we doing this morning? All right, y'all are good, awake, feel good. Hey, my name is Kenny Baker. I'm one of the pastors here and the adult discipleship pastor. And from time to time, they let me get up here and just speak on different things. So who knows what's going to happen today? But we'll keep going and press through. And I wanted to start out with this idea that we have. We have this series called Road Trip, and there's three really important things to a road trip. It's the destination, it's the music that you choose, and then it's the car that you're riding in. You got to be in a good car. And so I was the friend growing up who was able to get his car first. So I was the one driving me and my friends around all the time to the different spots and destinations and girlfriends' houses and all that stuff. And so I wanted to let you know that I started out with this beauty. It's a 92, yes. It's the only clap I ever got for this car. It was a 1992 Chevy Beretta turquoise. It did have pink writing on it. It was great. This thing got me around so well for 6 months. For 6 months because it had an oil leak and I didn't know. And my parents didn't tell me. It's completely their fault. They didn't tell me, hey, check your oil on occasion. So one day when I went to go start the engine, I hear this knocking in the engine, which meant I was about to throw a ride. For those of you who are mechanics, you know what's wrong with this. For the rest of us, basically one day I'm going to drive and the engine's just going to blow up on me. Well, we had a good year, and so my parents were like, you know what? Mulligan, let's try this again. And so we upgraded to this bad boy, 96 Monte Carlo. It wasn't the 96 Impala SS that I wanted, but hey, this thing was great. But when they gave me this car, they said, hey, you've messed one up. Don't mess this one up. You're not getting another one. And a car, in 2001, I was 16. That was my lifeline. And it was also my friend's lifeline because we could go anywhere and do anything. And so my friends would call me, and one time a friend called and said, hey, I need to get my girlfriend home. She lives about an hour and a half away from here, but she's got to be home by a certain time. Can you take us? Well, you know what I said? Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Like, let's get in the car and drive, and cool. So as I'm driving to her house to drop her off with them, it starts pouring down raining. And I'll be honest, I was terrified because I had just gotten this car. I've already messed one up. I cannot mess this one up. And so as I pull up to her house, I start to go down this driveway, but then I see this huge puddle of water in the driveway, and she lived out in the sticks. So it was mud, and it was this long gravel driveway, and it's pouring down. And in an instant, I freaked out and thought, oh no, if I go through this puddle, it's going to flood the engine. My car's going to break down. I'm never going to get another car again. I cannot go through this puddle. I cannot mess my car up again. And so in a brilliant 16-year-old mind moment, I was like, I'm just going to go around it. And so I turned the wheel and started to go into this guy's grass. And all of a sudden, my car stopped moving. I was stuck. I was in there and mud is just flying everywhere. And all of a sudden, I hear her in the back say, oh my goodness, did you just drive in my dad's yard? I was like, yeah. And she goes, he's going to kill you. I was like, whoa. She said, he loves his grass more than he loves me. It's like, okay, that felt like with some conviction to it. All right, well, let's get out of here so that this doesn't happen. So I'm doing everything I can to get out, and I'm pressing the gas, and it's just going deeper and deeper and deeper into the mud. I mean, we're putting wood under the tire, and then the neighbors start coming out. And the neighbors, I hear chattering, and one of them goes, "We got to get this kid out of here. He's going to kill him." I was like, that's 2 death threats in like 10 minutes. And so a neighbor comes up, says, "Hey, I'm going to pull you out, and then you got to go." So I get in the car, he pulls me out. The neighbors are clapping, "Yay, woohoo, oh my gosh." And I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." He said, No, don't talk. You need to go. I said, "Okay." So I go, and later I found out when her dad got home, the door opened, and it was, "Who drove through my yard?" And he was livid. And so I've never been back to that city ever again. I ditched the Monte Carlo, burned it. It's gone forever. But really what happened is I thought the smart thing to do was to avoid the trouble ahead. But in trying to steer away from the mess, to steer away from what I thought was going to create more problems for me, I actually created a worse problem for myself, and I got stuck. And I mean, that's kind of what life is for us, right? Is we try so hard to avoid pain, to avoid discomfort, and anything that looks too hard. And so we think we can just dodge it or go around it. And then we end up getting stuck in something worse sometimes. Stuck in fear, stuck in coping, stuck in isolation. And the truth is, if you've lived longer than 30 seconds, that you know that there's just no avoiding the difficulty that life has to offer. We're all going to face pain. We're all going to face some sort of difficulty. We're all going to face some sort of suffering in our lives. So our question, it really can't be, how do I avoid this anymore? Our question has to be, how do I get through it? And so we've been taught and we've been sold in our life that a good life, it means comfort. It means control. It means the absence of pain. And so we do anything we can to dodge it and to go around the things that threaten our comfort, that threaten our control, that threaten the absence of pain. And I'm not saying that avoiding pain is wrong or bad. It is right. But the problem is it's inevitable. It's hard to avoid. No one's actually living the life that they're selling on the internet. I mean, you can't scroll for more than 30 seconds without hearing like, "Hey, here's the miracle thing that's going to solve your problem." Ever since I turned 40 a couple of months ago, I have started getting these ads. It's about every other TikTok that say, "Hey, are you an old, tired, overweight guy who's exhausted all the time? You need testosterone." I'm like, why are y'all targeting me all of a sudden on this? Right? Or just think about your own timeline. You're flipping through, and the world is selling you that, "Hey, is there something broken in your life? Here's the thing that's going to fix it." The problem is, no one is actually living that life. If you ask any 10-year-old, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" they're not saying policeman, fireman, or anything like that. That's too stressful. They're saying, "I'm going to be a YouTuber, and I'm going to play video games all day, and I'm going to get paid for it because it's amazing, and there's no problems with this." We're being sold on the idea that a good life is absent of pain. And here's the thing. When you come to church, we're not really telling you any different. We're actually telling you that if you want the good life, follow Jesus. And so all of us are kind of coming to the realization that everywhere we look and we're being sold on the good life, we start to say, "Well, is this going to fix my problem?" And if it doesn't, we move on to the next thing. And when we come to church, we ask this question: what is God going to do about my suffering? What's he going to do about my pain? And if he doesn't solve it, if he doesn't fix it, then maybe I should just try something else. So anytime we come to church, There's a danger when we talk about suffering. So I want to set an expectation for us all today. The topic of suffering in church, it's often handled with well-meaning but incomplete answers. Things that try to give a simple solution to a deeply complex experience. And we want people to trust and to follow Jesus. So sometimes I think we're tempted as followers of Jesus to minimize the real pain in the process. I mean, if you've talked to anybody for long enough, you've faced some thoughts or some statements in people trying to answer your pain. Maybe you've come along and experienced something difficult. You've lost your job and somebody says, well, everything happens for a reason. Yeah, that doesn't help. Sure, there's some truth in that, but that doesn't meet my need right now. Or maybe somebody just says, well, you just got to have more faith. It's like, I haven't even gotten to the trust part. I'm still dealing with some grief. And while it's true, we do have to have more faith. Like, I'm not there yet. We're trying to skip a step, possibly. Or maybe somebody says, God won't give you more than you can handle. I think he mixed my file up with somebody else, because I sure enough have felt some overwhelm by the things he's let me handle. I mean, there's a laundry list of answers that we have faced in the midst of our suffering. And here's why they're problematic. It's not that there's not some truth and some well-meaning intention behind it. It's that they're all trying to answer why we suffer without offering any hope in the midst of the suffering. Because we all want to know the why. If I just know why I'm going through this, I could get through it better. But let me tell you something. Even if you know why, it wouldn't satisfy you. It wouldn't help you get through it. So my aim this morning is not to minimize your pain. It's not to minimize the difficulties that you're facing, the personal struggles, the thing that are creating rifts between you and God, or you and your family and other people. But my hope, my aim this morning is to offer a way forward through suffering. Something we say here at Verve City a lot is that our faith is not a shield from suffering, but a pathway through it. Our faith doesn't end all suffering, but it does help us to get through it. And so this morning, as we look at Jesus on the road to Calvary, we're going to see how Jesus faced suffering. So my aim this morning is to show you that a good life, it's not found in avoiding suffering, but walking with Jesus through it. So we're going to walk down this road and we're going to look at a few things. We're going to talk about Jesus' suffering and what he faced. We're going to go scene by scene, and we may have to move quickly through each scene, but there's about 5 different scenes that he faces. And we're not only going to see what he had to endure, but we're going to see how he carried it and how he responded and how he gives us a new way to face difficulty and pain and suffering. Because Jesus walked through suffering not with resentment or fear, but with resilience, a strength and a hope. Now, let me pause here, and I want to be very clear as we go into this, because this is a touchy subject. When I talk about suffering today, I'm speaking of the kind of personal, everyday pain that all of us carry. I'm talking about anxiety. I'm talking about loss. I'm talking about disappointment, betrayal, talking about exhaustion. Now, I know that there are other forms of catastrophic suffering. There's abuse, there's trauma, there's war, there's disaster, and those run far deeper. And they deserve thoughtful, tender, and specific care and teaching. So, my goal today isn't to answer every kind of pain, but it's to offer hope and a path forward through the kind that many of us are facing day to day. Because the last thing I want you to do is come away and say, well, we talked about suffering, and Pastor just said, well, trust God more. And that has helped me none. It's not my goal. I want to give you a more complete picture of how Jesus walked through pain and suffering and how he responded. And hopefully we can come out of here seeing some hope and drawing some strength from his example, from his presence. Now, when we talk about pain, we talk about Jesus and what he faced. A lot of times we think of physical pain. We think of the lashing that he took, and we think about the nails in his hands and his feet. But we're going to see that on the road to Calvary, it wasn't just physical pain, but he endured emotional anguish, relational betrayal, injustice, and exhaustion. And my prayer is not that you're facing these and hope that you're facing these, but if you are facing these, my prayer is that you would see how Jesus responded and how he endured these things, and that you would be encouraged that he can meet you right where you are. So we're going to start in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus' road to the cross, the road to Calvary, started in a garden. It's the night he was betrayed, and he goes into the garden, and he spends time with God, and he prays. And here's the thing about this garden, is he frequented it often. It says in Luke chapter 22 that Jesus went out as usual to Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. And on reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." And he withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed. And here's where we should listen. "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." And an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly. He kept praying. And his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. And when he rose from a prayer, he went back to the disciples. He found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. "Why are you sleeping?" he asked them. "Get up and pray so that you will not fall into temptation." Jesus' road to Calvary starts in a calm, serene garden, but he takes to it this anguish, this anxiety. He felt deep sorrow. He felt a deep, overwhelming anxiety, and he even wished that things could be different. He was honest with God about his feelings, and he even leaned on his close friends even when they let him down. I think for many of us, we can look at our lives and say, I feel a ton of pressure in my life. Whether it's from expectations of others, or whether it's the ability to provide for myself or my family. I don't think any of us are strangers to the anxiety that pressure of life brings. And I think we're tempted to isolation and loneliness, especially in our high expectation culture. I want to say this, Jesus gets it. He's been here. So following him means that we don't have to hide our struggles. We can be real, and we can invite God, and we can invite others in. So as we look to see how Jesus faces anxiety and anguish and overwhelm, we can remember this. When anxiety closes in, you don't have to fake strength. You can be honest with God. Even if your only honest statement to God is, I don't want any of this. And then maybe another harder piece to this is inviting others in, even if they don't show up for you perfectly. Vulnerability is scary, but it's not a weakness. It's the first step towards resilience. Jesus models for us, if you're dealing with some deep anguish, don't do it alone. Go to God in honest and open prayer, and don't isolate yourself, but bring others in with you. But here's the thing, even Jesus didn't surround himself with people who were going to not fail him. Sometimes we want people to be there for us, but we cut them off and we isolate because they don't show up for us perfectly. But Jesus models for us, don't be alone in the weight that you're carrying. So he's talking to his disciples, and he's feeling the weight, but the hits don't stop there. Because then right after that, his friend comes. While he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus said, he knew what was going on, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" And when Jesus' followers saw that what was going on and what was going to happen, they said, "Lord, should we strike with our swords? Should we protect you?" And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus answered, "No more of this. No more. No more retaliation. No more violence. No more betrayal." And he touched the man's ear, and he healed him. Here's the thing, Jesus experienced betrayal and abandonment by those closest to him. Yet he responded without bitterness, even healing an enemy's wound. What I've come to find in Southern California is that relationships here are very sacred. Because there's a lot of transients here. There's a lot of people who come here and then leave. And there's a lot of people who've been here for a long time and they go, "You know what? It's time to pack up and go to Tennessee and find a better life." I don't know who sold you on that lie, but I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, so I can say that. But what I found here is relationships are sacred. They're hard to come by. And the ones that you have, you hold strongly. You hold tightly. So when there's relational tension, when there's betrayal, it cuts deeper here. It cuts deeper because you're very vulnerable when you have people close to you. And Jesus experienced a deep betrayal, a deep cut from somebody he walked with who saw everything that he was about. In fact, Judas knew Jesus so well, he knew where Jesus would be that night. And he betrayed him. In a culture like ours, full of frequent transitions, full of a lot of relational pain, the gospel is meant to shape us to forgive, to heal, and to move forward without letting bitterness define us. So when betrayal from a close friend breaks your trust, what Jesus is showing us is that it doesn't have to define your future. It doesn't have to define your immediate reaction. He actually shows us that freedom of choosing forgiveness over bitterness brings healing. When we stop rehearsing the wound that others caused us and we start releasing it over to God, that's where healing can begin. At one point, Jesus says, this just has to stop. So I don't know the pain of betrayal, the pain of relational tension that you have or you carry, but what Jesus is showing is that if you continue in the hurt and keep rehearsing the hurt, it's not going to heal there. He shows us forgiveness even for an enemy who means us harm. It's going to be the only thing that brings healing. And you would think after his friend betrayed him, maybe he would catch a little bit of a break, but immediately after they grab him and arrest him, and they start to take him back and forth between the Romans and the Jews to judge him and be sure that he's going to face death. And so his third scene is now him experiencing injustice even though he was innocent. In fact, for the third time, he spoke to them. Oh, why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him punished and then release him. But with loud shouts, they insistently demanded that he be crucified. And their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. Jesus faced lies, mockery, and injustice, and yet he didn't retaliate or seek revenge. He trusted God for his vindication. This is hard because, especially in our city right now, there's many people who are wrestling with a broken system, wrestling with the injustice that happens each and every day, and being silent on it feels like we're saying it's okay and there's nothing to do here. So this one's hard because of the injustice and the unfair treatment that's happening to humans. Are we supposed to be silent? Are we not supposed to speak up? I think for Jesus, he had a mission that extended beyond his own good. It was for the good of others. And so when we see systemic injustice, when we see people being treated unfairly, they're not suffering those things so that others can benefit. So we're not silent on those. But Jesus knew his mission. Jesus knew that by him facing injustice and betrayal, it would actually bring freedom to others. So it's not a comparison that really matches up. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't still difficult for Jesus to face lies. Jesus shows that the way of non-retaliation and deeper trust, it's a way to challenge and break the pattern of violence and payback. And so maybe you're facing some people who misunderstand you or speak out against your name and your character, and you look at Jesus and go, I don't know that I can just stand silent. But when we look at Jesus, he stood silent in the face of false accusations and injustice, not because he was agreeing with it, not because he was allowing it because it was right, or not because he was even too weak, but because he trusted God to make things right. His response wasn't passivity, it was power under control. So when you're misunderstood, you're mistreated, you're unfairly judged, Jesus invites you to entrust your story to God. You don't have to fight every battle. Let your peace speak louder than your need to prove yourself. What's messed up about all this is they unnecessarily beat Jesus. He's already got this internal anguish. He's already been hurt by betrayal of a friend. He's now standing in front of people who are judging him wrongly. And then they put a cross on his back, and after he is beaten and physically worn down and exhausted, he now has to carry his own cross to his own death. And so the next scene we see is Jesus walking down the path to the cross. And it says, as the soldiers led him away, they seized Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country. And they put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. And a large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. And Jesus turned and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, don't weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children." The utter exhaustion and unfairness that Jesus is facing here, it's brutal. I mean, he's been up all night, being mistreated, humiliated, experiencing pain, and yet there's a nugget here in this story that shows us that even Jesus, in his utter exhaustion, needed some help. Simon of Cyrene, in him helping, reminds us that no one is strong alone. We're in a culture of hustle and self-reliance, and the gospel calls us to accept help, to bear each other's burdens, and to find meaning even when life is hard. You weren't created to carry everything alone. And in a city that praises independence and hustle and grit, Jesus shows us the power of humility, of letting others in to our lives and asking for help and finding strength in community. Resilience is not self-reliance, it's shared strength. I know for many of you, you say, "I'm just not strong enough, so I have to get stronger. I have to get better." But Jesus is showing us, the Son of God, the one who's handling everything the right way, that he still needed people alongside him, sharing strength with him. If Jesus needed shared strength to make it through his exhaustion, you probably do too. And so he makes it all the way through to the cross, and he faces his own death. He's on the cross, and two other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be executed. And when they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals. Remember, he was innocent. There was nothing there for him to be charged on. And he's crucified with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. Even on the cross, Jesus forgave his killers. He welcomed the outcast, and he trusted God to the very end. Trusted God to the very end. The cross challenges this idea that strength is about power or comfort. You see, the way of Jesus transforms pain and rejection into new beginnings and deep peace, because you don't have to let pain harden you. You don't have to let pain embitter you. In Jesus, pain can become the doorway to freedom, not just for you, but for others. And Jesus shows us that forgiveness it's not about accepting what happened and making it okay. It's choosing to write a different ending. Because when you forgive, you break the cycle of pain. And as we look at how Jesus walked through these different scenes of suffering, I know that all of us are sitting here like, that's great for him. But I don't know that this is for me. I don't know that I have the trust he has. I don't know that I have the mindset that he has. I don't know that I have the love he has for people. So what can we take from all of this? What's the pathway forward through suffering? Well, here's the pattern that we see from Jesus. He's honest with God. I know this doesn't seem like much, but I think many of us have been raised to think that we have to fake strength. That we have to go to God already put together and okay. And that's what God's expecting from us. But Jesus models for us that we can go to God in whatever weakness we have and we can be honest with him. Because you can't experience comfort from God if you're pretending that you're fine. Honesty opens the door for a real relationship with God, not a religious performance. You see, Jesus in Gethsemane showed us that raw, unfiltered prayers are not only welcomed by God, but they're honored. Jesus was honest enough to tell God, I don't want to go through this. If there is another way, get me around it. Even though Jesus knew why he was facing the cross, he wanted out of it. So you can be honest with God. But then there's a responsibility we have after this. It's pretty difficult, and it's this. It's looking for God's response. I have a 4-year-old who is the most determined human being on the face of the planet. And if she wants something, she's gonna get it. I can't tell you how many times she comes to me and says, hey, Dad, I want a snack. I'm like, but you didn't finish the snack that I got you 2 seconds ago. I don't want that one. I want this one now. And I get that, and she's like, no, I want the other one. I'm like, girl, you are torturing me. What's going on here? But here's what happens. She has something in her mind, and she says, I'm going to get it. I can't tell you how many times she has said, fine, I'll get it myself. As a 4-year-old, she has figured out how to pull a stool up, climb on the counter, get a bowl, somehow spill milk everywhere, pour the cereal in. But she has her mind up and determined, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to get. And I think we approach God a lot that way. God, I'm coming to you and I'm honest with you. And because I'm telling you what I want, I expect that you're going to give me that. But what Jesus shows us is that we have to look for God's response for us. And so this shifts our question from why is this happening, what do I want, to where is God acting in my pain? When we start to look for God's response, it opens our eyes to the subtle, sustaining ways that God shows up. Because in that moment, when Jesus prayed, God met him with what he needed in that moment. In Luke 22, 42, and 43, the prayer is, Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me. He says, God, I don't want this. Take it from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. And what happened? An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. God's response to Jesus' prayer is to provide strength for the ordeal and not to remove the cup. God's presence in suffering often shows up through divine help, not divine escape. And Jesus shows us that trusting God is not so that we won't experience suffering. It's so that we can still experience life and joy and hope and strength in the midst of it. The angel's appearance, it's a visual representation that Jesus was not abandoned, that God was present. He was actively involved, just not in the way that we might expect. And finally, the third way that Jesus shows us to get through pain and suffering with resilience is to break the cycle of pain with love. He breaks the cycle of pain with love. You see, some of your suffering is at the hands of others because pain naturally wants to pass itself on. You've all heard hurt people often hurt people. But when we choose love instead of lashing out, we stop the chain reaction and we create space for healing rather than harm. And Jesus in Romans 12 says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So what does this mean for us? That we just somehow have to find the character and the strength to face our anxiety? We have to somehow push up some compassion and face those who betray us? We got to find the willpower to lay down our revenge and vindication, the humility to accept help when we're weak, and somehow we got to find the love to radically forgive people. I would rather just avoid all of those. How about, let's not put me in that position, God, because I'm probably going to say something you don't want me to say. I choose E, none of the above. So I know what you're thinking. How did Jesus do this? How do we face suffering with resilience instead of resentment, just like Jesus did? Well, we have to trace it back to the moment that I believe Jesus made this decision to face it with honesty, to face it with love instead of more anger. To face it by looking for how God was going to act. I think we can trace this all the way back to the garden in his prayer when he says, "I want your will, not mine." It's in that moment in the garden that Jesus is reversing what happened in the Garden of Eden when they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The tree that God told them not to eat from. Because in that moment they decided, it's not your will, God, but my will be done. And Jesus is showing us that trusting God looks like doing what he says. Even when it seems like it won't protect you, it won't promote you, and it won't pay off. Ultimately, Jesus' foundation for resilience and hope was his trust for God the Father. But in my personal experience, if I look through my life, there's a lot of times I don't feel like I've seen God show up. So I know many of you are sitting here saying, "Pastor, don't just tell me to trust God more." Because I don't know that I can right now, based on the difficulties and the troubles and the lack of support around me and all the stuff that I've had to face in all my life and some of the fears and the anxieties that are in front of me right now. Trusting God is not a switch that I can flip on right now. I can't just all of a sudden just believe that God is with me, that he is for me, or that he is worth trusting. And I think Jesus would agree with you. Because it's not just a sudden switch that we turn on. Trusting God is not a decision that you make in the face of the battle. Trusting God is not a feeling that you produce out of thin air. Trusting God, it's not a belief that you can manufacture in an instant. Because Jesus' trust was not something that he found in the garden while he prayed. And it definitely didn't come from his circumstances. Jesus' trust for God came years before. At the beginning of his ministry, his disciples said, "Jesus, how are we supposed to pray?" Years before, he said, "Father in heaven, hallowed is your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." Jesus has been praying for God's will and praying to trust God with his life for years before this moment. This has been a journey that he has practiced and pushed into his life time and time again. And we know this because it says when he went to the garden, it says that as usual, he went to pray and talk to God and say, "Not my will, God, but yours be done." Trusting God was not easy for Jesus. It was just consistently practiced. Jesus didn't just preach surrender, he practiced it. He spent years praying it into his life. So his trust in God came from his relationship with God, not from a moment of willpower, not from a wish that God granted for him. Trusting God is built and strengthened over the course of your entire life. So when his darkest hour came, he didn't draw from a last-minute reserve of strength. He was too exhausted for that. He drew from a well of trust that had been poured into over time. He knew who he had been praying to. He trusted the hands that he was placing his future in. Here's the thing, that's the invitation for us too. Jesus' invitation for us is not to fake confidence in the face of suffering, but to keep building a relationship with God now so that when the storms hit, we know where to run. So maybe you don't trust God right now, especially in the light of how your life has gone, or maybe where your life has ended up. Maybe you've asked the question, God, is this what following you gets me? Maybe you just don't believe in God because he hasn't made himself known to you. Or the version of God that you have seen and experienced from churches or from others has actively harmed you or turned you off from the idea of God. Or maybe you've just gotten through your difficulties with other methods apart from God, through therapy and counseling. Throwing yourself into exercise and dieting has just done wonders for you. But here's what I need you to hear. You can live without trusting God. You can cope. You can heal to some degree. You can survive apart from God. But trusting God isn't just about surviving. It's about knowing that you're not alone in your pain. You're not abandoned in your questions, and you're not unloved in your weakness. It's about drawing strength or whatever you need from someone bigger than yourself. And that's what Jesus knew in Gethsemane. And that's what Jesus invites you into. Not a blind faith, not an empty religion, but a relationship where trust is formed, not in a single moment, but over a lifetime of walking with him and being with him, so that you have a resilience and a hope through whatever difficulties you face. Because facing suffering with resilience instead of resentment is about living with a hope that doesn't collapse under pressure. Jesus' story didn't end in the garden. It didn't end with betrayal. It didn't end with injustice. It didn't end with exhaustion. It didn't even end at the cross with his death. Because 3 days later, Jesus walked out of the grave. And in doing that, he proved that suffering is not the end of the road with God. It's the doorway to new life. He shows us that pain doesn't get the last word. Death doesn't write the final chapter. And when you walk with him, the road through suffering leads to something greater: renewed strength, restored relationships, a peace that surpasses all understanding, a restored hope, and a new life. And I believe as you spend time being with Jesus, you will begin to understand the hope that you can have and the strength that he will provide, and he will give that to you. Because before the cross, before the agony of Gethsemane, Jesus said this to his disciples: in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Your pathway through suffering is not through your own strength, your own self-reliance, your own independence, your own worthiness. Your pathway through suffering is walking with the one who walked that path before you. And he can encourage you, and he can meet you right where you are and provide you with the strength, the encouragement, the community that you need as you pass through. Resilience in suffering is not going to be an absence of pain. It's going to be the presence of God with you. So I want to pray for you today. And I want to pray an honest prayer, but I also want you to pray a prayer yourself and be honest with God and let him know what you're carrying. And then look for his response this week. And as you're looking for God, my prayer is that your life will be defined by love so that you would break the cycle of pain in your life. We only have hope because Jesus has overcome suffering on our behalf. And he gives us new life and a new hope to walk forward with resilience. Let's pray. God, thank you so much. Not so much for suffering. We don't really thank you for that, but we can thank you in suffering. We can thank you in pain, in difficulty, in disappointment. But God, we can only do this in your presence. So God, we just want to be honest with you. There's just times it's difficult to slow down and to stop and to spend time with you because we don't always see you in how you're acting and how you're moving. And so God, my prayer for us this week is that we would be honest with you, and in our honesty, in our relationship with you, we would be able to see you respond. So God, change our minds, change our hearts to have a hope. The suffering doesn't get the final word, but Jesus does, because he has overcome all the world through Adam. Help us to walk and be with Jesus so that we know the strength that you supply. I ask all this in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen.